gorgeous friends. It's so nice to see you. We're going to have people joining throughout the call. I'm really excited about this call. I looked at your online presence and then I looked at your books and I thought, oh my God, well, I already know his work, but I want to, because what I didn't know, I have a rule before these calls that, oh, you guys know the rules. Quirky questions only, please. Feel free to type them in the chat. Charles will not be monitoring the chat, but if you have a message for him, he will get it after the call. And I will filter the questions through to him during the session. And I saw you were like leading man material. You're like interviews and like, I do have another question for you as well, but let's launch off with, I cheated a little and broke my golden rule of trying to know as little as possible about the guests because I like to find out about you with the audience. But then I looked you up on YouTube and saw your interviews. And then I saw the movie that I think you wrote. Did you write it as well as star in it?
The one with Joan Collins or the?
I don't know if Joan
I
Collins
have
was.
two. I have two. I have a half an hour short movie I made with Joan Collins. Just
What
the
was
two.
the name of that one?
Fetish.
What was the other one?
Let Me Die Quietly.
That's the one I saw a clip of. You're like Hollywood leading man, like Clark Gable, like proper Hollywood. Even in your interviews, the way you wear a suit and the way you hold your, like proper star presence. So I'm really interested in how you didn't end up going way down that path and how you ended up writing instead.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we can end the interview right now because you just made my night. Thank you very much for that compliment.
But you guys,
Um,
if anybody looks up those interviews, look up YouTube trailer Charles Casillo and you'll see what I mean. Seriously. Okay, go ahead.
um, so yeah, I didn't start out as a writer. I never took a writing class in my life. I'm a high school graduate. That's as far as I got. I did want to be an actor. I'm a New Yorker, a native New Yorker. And I went to the Academy of Dramatic Arts and then I went to HB Studios. But it's really, it was just impossible. There was no internet back then, so you couldn't promote yourself. And I wasn't even getting good auditions, let alone getting parts. So my thought was if I was a writer writing entertainment pieces for the New York publications, like the ones that they gave out at clubs, of what was going on, the plays, the movies that were opening, and they were freebies. So I approached one about interviewing people on Broadway, interviewing people in film, and they said, sure, give it a shot. So it started as $50 a piece, and then they upped it, and they had 5 magazines. And I was writing for Broadway Weekly, Opera Monthly, and then after a few months, I wasn't meeting anyone to network for acting, but I was getting more and more jobs as a writer.
Okay, but wait, let me stop you here. So where was your mindset while you were doing this? Were you still thinking, I need to find a way to be an actor? Or were you thinking, hold on a minute, I could be just as happy doing this?
In the beginning, it was more, I wanted to be an actor, and it was like, oh, I'm going to meet this, I'm going to meet this Broadway director, or I'm going to meet this actor. But my nature, I'm like such a perfectionist. I mean, I try to do everything as well as I can. So I think that the thing about me that changed is that I read differently. I wasn't just reading for entertainment anymore. I was reading to learn. So I always say I never studied writing, but the greatest writers in the world taught me because I started reading for structure and voice and all those things, how they described the weather, how they described clothing, how they described. So it changed in that way. It changed, and then what really was the definitive moment for me was the New York Times called me, and they asked me if I'd be interested in doing a piece for the Sunday Times. I didn't even know they were reading me. And I was like, how do you read? These are like not big publications. What was happening is the people that I was interviewing, they were putting my pieces in their press kits, and they would send it to the New York Times, so they were seeing it. I wasn't sending it, but I remember I was doing a Broadway writer. His name was Nicky Silver, and I did a piece on him, and it got a full page in the Sunday Times. And all of a sudden, I'd walk into a Broadway play and I'd hear, "The Times is here, the Times is here." And I was like, "Oh, where?" You know, I couldn't believe, but it was me. And then everything changed because now I was a professional, you know, and it was like,
Yeah.
so it started taking over writing. You know, it was like I wanted to be good. I was getting better interviews. I was getting, you know, longer pieces. So then I said, "Oh, you know, like this is going to take over. I like it a lot. I like writing, but I'm an actor." So I just picked up and moved to LA to give it one last shot. You know, I was in my late 20s, and I went to LA with 3 pieces of luggage and, you know, hello, look for an agent, and here I am. You know, threw my hat up and toured.
That's what we do, isn't it? You get that I'm an actor in our head, and like you could build the Taj Mahal, and somebody couldn't say, "Oh my God, you're the most amazing architect in the world." Oh no, no, I'm not an architect. This is just I'm an actor.
That was it for a long time.
Yeah,
Um, and I got an agent, but you know, I just wasn't getting anything, and I had to make a living, so I went back to writing. And you know, if I wasn't going to make it as an actor, I'm glad that I got to be a writer, because I think that if you're a creative person, it's got to come out some way. Like if you don't act, you write. If you don't write, you paint. If you don't paint, you choreograph. I mean, it's all, you know, you got to get it out. Otherwise, you walk around like you're on fire. So at
yeah.
least I was able to do something that was creative, and, you know, because it was entertainment journalism, something that I love.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, because from the way people talk about you, you seem to have a way in, an insight that other writers don't have. And so you tell a story that brings the person to life and makes them feel like a friend, which when you're reading a memoir or any biography or, that's not easy to find. Personally, I think you could have done the acting thing, but I'm glad you did the writing thing.
Thank you.
Um, so I think what you should do both. You should just go back then and be an
Yeah.
actor as well, now that you're a successful writer, and you can have your cake and eat it too.
Well, now in the acting field, I mean, this, you know, we're talking like 15 years ago when I stopped acting, you know, 12, 10, 13 years ago, I stopped acting. But now there's so many channels and networks and, you know,
Yeah,
internet series. And so there's so much more opportunity to be an actor. And if you're
yeah,
not doing it, just do it yourself. That's what I did. I wrote 2 movies that I just wrote myself and acted in because I really wanted to do it. So I got that out of my system, at least, because my number one dream in life was to make a movie. That's all I really wanted.
yeah,
So I did those, and you know, I'll never have regrets and say, well, I should have, I could have,
yeah.
you know, did it. So
Well, I think it's brilliant. Okay, 10-year-old Charles, tell me about him. Where was he? What was he thinking? Were you dreaming? Were you just living in the moment? Tell me about 10-year-old Charles.
I would say that I was a dreamer. I was a little bit of a misfit growing up, an outcast, an outsider. Um, I grew up in
All the best people were, all the best people were.
I grew up in like an Italian American, very defined male female roles, and you couldn't cross, which I crossed. You know, I like to read. I wasn't good at sports. I like to read. You know, I was considered like a little sissy sometimes, and it hurt me. But I found another world in old movies on television, back in the day when they had the Late Late Show and everything.
Oh yeah.
Um, they became my first like real friends, other than my cousins. I mean, the movie stars opened up a whole world to me. So I was an 11-year-old and I knew Cary Grant. It was unheard of, you know, in my neighborhood. No one was talking about Rita Hayworth when I was 10 and 11 and 12. But you know, that was really in a lot of ways they saved me.
I'm picturing little Charles in New York. Hold on, Pa. Watching the black and white movies. I love that. So, did you have any like when I grow up thoughts, or was it just like in the moment, this is life is good kind of thing?
um, Eventually it got to the point is when I grow up, I want to live in LA. I wanted to go to Los Angeles. That was, you know, my dream. I just felt it was like I don't have a wanderlust. Like I don't really want to see a lot of places. I mean, I'd love to, but I don't. It's not. But LA, I had a real strong desire to go there. And when I moved there, I just got off the plane and everyone was telling me, "Oh, you're such a New Yorker. You're not going to like it. The people there are so phony. You're going to, it's
They
not for
all
you."
say that about us. I don't know. Well, how old were you
I was
the first
28,
time?
28. The first time
Okay.
I went there, I went with a friend. I was like 21. We just went for a week.
Okay.
And it gave me like a feel of it, but not really. But when I moved there, I just went with 3 pieces of luggage, got off the plane, and I fell in love with it. Everything went right because I was vibrating this is a good energy. This is where I should be. And because of that, I was attracting all this great stuff, right away. I got a great place to live. I made friends that are still friends. It was just great. It was just
That,
really,
do you know what? That's true, isn't it? You read all the memes about that, right?
yeah.
But it really is true. And it's true the other way around as well.
My people, but some of my friends say, "Oh, Charles is off on another one of his flights of fancy." When I say you really got to try to stay positive, because then you'll get more positive things. When you're negative, you bring more.
Yeah.
Um, I find for me that that's true, but it's not my nature. My nature is to always go to the negative part, and so I have to really fight and work to
I think
stay.
that's the Italian thing because I've got that too. The world's pretty much going to end anyway, pretty
Yeah.
quickly. You might as well eat. Yeah, I do think I agree with you because I've noticed sometimes really good things have happened for me, and I'm trying to figure out what's up, what's going to go wrong, or assuming, oh, they really mean, and it's like, if it's so simple, if we just honestly expected the best, isn't it?
In my experience, I mean, that's what I find when I'm vibrating good energy, feeling good about myself, looking at the positive. I mean, these are all, I sound like a meme, but
I know,
I,
but the memes are really smart, aren't they?
yeah, some
They're
of the other
memes
things,
for a reason.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I, screenshot them, put them on my computer top so I could look at them when I wake up, first thing and try to remember, like keep that mindset.
Okay, tell me about your books. Like, what order and how did that become a thing? And how did you find your way into it? And most importantly, not just your way into it, how did you find your way into it? Like the voice that you seem to have that people seem to resonate with. So, what book did you start with?
My first book was a novel called The Marilyn Diaries, and I fictionalize the inner voice of Marilyn Monroe. Basically, it's just written in a diary format. Some of my friends say it's really the diary of Charles Casillo because I relate to Marilyn. She's my muse. Almost every road I've taken started with Marilyn Monroe. I have to say, I'm like a real nut in that way. When I discovered her when I was 10 or 11 years old, and I just had to find out more about her and watch her movies and look at her photos. I used to draw her all the time, paint her. I mean, she's been a real muse. Um,
My
and
sister's the same, I have to say, Marilyn Monroe and Yul Brynner for some reason.
Whoever your people, you find your people.
Yeah.
I have my people. Marilyn was my main one, but I thought, again, going back to when I was a kid, I thought it was the only one. No one was talking about Marilyn Monroe. She died before I was born. It was very nutty to be talking about her or interested in her. But then when the internet came out, I found out, oh, there's a lot of, I call them Marilyn people, like it's like Kim Kardashian is one. And I mean, like there's just people relate to her for some reason. She had some inner magic that hasn't really been explained. So I wanted to write about her at the time, but I didn't want to do a biography uh, because there were a lot, and I wanted to write about her in the way that she exists only for me. And I didn't have a deal. I was writing for the LA Times, but I didn't have a deal, and it was good because I didn't have a contract or anything, and I could just do it. There was no pressure. I could just do it at my own leisure. I would do it when I was in my feels. I would write, when I was feeling very Marilyn Monroe-esque, I would go and write,
A labor of love, like a
yeah,
true act of creation without all the other stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
And then I self-published it and did well for me because it had the Marilyn Monroe attached. It was before Amazon had I actually had the physical books printed up and I sold them through a website.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Was it
and
exciting seeing your first hard copy coming in the mail? Was it exciting?
it was very, very exciting, but the perfectionist in me came out and I was like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have picked a different thing. I should have not left that there. Or
Don't you hate that? Don't you hate that? Because then when do you let yourself in? When is it ever good enough? Because it
never.
steals the joy, doesn't it? From that, that should be an amazing moment.
Yeah. It is, it goes in many directions.
Yeah,
There is that like a feeling of accomplishment. And then, when people like it, of course, that builds it up. I try not to read my stuff right away. Like, after a book comes out, I try to wait many years before I look at it again because when I do, I'm like, oh, I should have done this, or why didn't I put that?
yeah,
Or, I don't like that, so the same thing with reviews. I read reviews when they come out, the professional reviews. But Goodreads and Amazon, I have a tendency to read one only like once or twice a year when I'm drunk because I want to answer the people. I want
yeah, you can't.
even whether it's good or bad, or they say something like I'll say something about Marilyn Monroe that really gets to me. They'll say, "Oh, you could tell a man wrote it. He's so misogynistic," and I like want to. I faint, and then I have to like, oh my God, how could they think that? Well, he talks about her body. Well, it's Marilyn Monroe. How do you write a book and not talk about her body? It's not. I'm not talking about it with lust. I'm talking about it with admiration and from a biography standpoint, how she used it.
There is
Those.
literally nothing you can do on that subject that you're not going to get panned by somebody.
Yeah, it's true. She's like religion. I
Yeah.
mean, politics and religion. You can't bring her up because everyone's going to jump on you. Oh no, she was this. Oh no, she was murdered. Oh no, she was.
You can't win that. And I say this all the time. I have one of my very first reviews was something about how I should never be allowed to speak out loud to anyone human being again in my life. It was for an audiobook that I was like really proud of. There were a lot of good reviews, but I don't remember any of them.
Oh, yeah, that's it. That's the thing.
So I don't read my reviews. I have a guy and I do the same for him. And once a month we double check each other's reviews in case there's something we need to learn from it, like a professional feedback thing that would be good to know. And we, as another professional, say, oh, by the way, something like what you've developed a lisp and quite a few people have been complaining about. I mean, that kind of thing. It's not happened yet, but I'm so much happier because I have colleagues that like they live and die. They'll read something bad, and how do you do your job? You
Yeah,
know,
I when I did the first movie that I made, it's like a very low budget, independent kind of
I
thing. A film that,
really liked it though. It was quite
thanks,
good.
thank you. When it came out, it was on Netflix in the beginning, and someone wrote, "Oh, his wonky. I have a lazy eye. Oh, his wonky eye. His this and that. His lisp." And I was, so broken up about it. It was like one of the first reviews that were up there, and I was like really carrying it around. And my friend said very simply, "Well, wow, Charles, you shouldn't do it then." And that was like one of those aha moments that Oprah talks about. Like, if you put yourself out there, of course you're going to hear it. Yeah,
Were they serious? Were they serious? Like they wouldn't do
no,
it?
it was like it was serious to not serious. It's like if you can't take a criticism, then don't do it. It's like, because you're going to hear it and that's a part of it. So
Yeah.
either don't do it or do it and hear the criticism. So
And
that was,
sometimes you're your own worst critic, aren't you? Because I remember when I started doing these Zoom calls, I think I spent a good month sending pictures of my screenshots of myself on Zoom going, do I have an eye that floats off to the side? I was like obsessed, like looking into like surgery because of like now even but sometimes it's like our own, and it's what you said earlier, energy.
yeah.
If we're in our head and everything, you're right, you just do it. You just literally gotta let that stuff slide off.
Yeah, that's why I try not to read it. Like I said, if I'm sometimes I'll just do it, and and it's exactly what you said though. It could be 10 great ones in a row, and
Yeah.
then there's that one star, and you're so like, how could they give it one star? I put so much work into it. I'm talking about the Marilyn Monroe biography, not the diary.
Yeah.
The real biography that I did on her, and it breaks my heart because Marilyn means so much to me, and I tried to do right by her. So when people don't like it, I really feel it.
Yeah, but it's just I had a coach tell me you're a creator, and some people are destroyers. And that's what they do. That's how they get their buzz and you chose your lane. You're a creator. You have to ignore the destroyers. You have to just ignore
Yeah,
them, let
yeah,
them
that's a good way to
get
put
their
it too.
attention. So you started this. This is your first, and it's a novel. It's nonfiction. So then, what was your first biography?
It was this writer named John Rechy. He's a gay writer who writes these beautiful you know, he was his heyday was like the 1960s, and he started out as he was very educated, but he started out as a male prostitute on Times Square,
Is
and
that
he
the
wrote
Lost Boys? Is that the Lost
no
Boys?
that book is called Lost Boys is a book of short stories that I did. He
Okay,
wrote a book
okay.
called City of Night. It's really beautiful. It had a very strong effect on me because when I first read it, I was a teenager, and he was writing about very sordid subject matter and seedy situations. And he wrote about it very lyrical and beautiful and poetically, and
I
it
love that.
really touched me. So when I moved to LA, I was working for a magazine, and they said, "Well, who do you want to do?" It was an ideas meeting, and like, who would you like to? And I said, "Well, I always wanted to do John Rechy." And they're like, "Oh, well, he's kind of reclusive, but if you can get him." And he was teaching at uh, I can't remember if it was well, it was one of the big Los Angeles ones, and I wrote a letter there, and I got a message from him on my answering machine at the time, and it was like one of the gods from Mount Olympus came down when I was listening to the message that he said, "Yeah, I'll do the interview." So
Wow.
I did the interview with him, and then it came out in the magazine, and a book publisher approached me about turning it into a book. So I said, "Well, I'd love to,
Wait,
but I
wait. I want to stop you here. Why do you think that? Because it's something I'm trying to get my finger on. What happened in that interview? What is it you think that happens in your interviews and your connection with these people that because that doesn't happen very often. A book publisher suddenly sees one article and approaches you and says, please make this a book. I mean, I'm sorry, I've seen Twitter. There's 8 zillion writers out there. What are you doing or feeling? How are you just becoming friends with them? Are you opening your mind to who they are? What is it that happens?
it's hard to like self-analyze that what it is, but if I had to like put like a umbrella thing about me as a writer, I would say I'm truly interested in the
Mm,
person. And if I like when I was being assigned people, if I wasn't interested in them, I would find something that interested me, and that did very well for me because um, say someone was on a junket for like a movie or a book, and I'll give you an example. They're usually asked like the same questions,
mm.
and I would ask what interested me, not what I thought should be in the article. What interested me. So I remember I was doing Maria Shriver. She had a children's book, and it was called "What Makes Tommy Different." And it was about a little boy who had Down syndrome, and he was in school, and the kids were making fun of him. And the little girl in the class asked his mother, "Why is Tommy different?" And she explains it, and it was really very touching book and everything. But when I went to interview her, I said, "What? How could you write about an outsider? I mean, you grew up as a Kennedy. You had everything that you wanted, and and yet you wrote about someone feeling different and
Brilliant,
isolated." And she
brilliant
said, "Well,
question.
she said, I'm going to answer that question, but first I'm going," and she like kind of like shifted away from it. And she was thinking about it. And then she came back and she gave it to me. And I got the cover on that. It wasn't supposed to be the cover. It wasn't supposed to be the
You
cover.
asked her, oh my God, I love this. You asked her something she didn't know about herself, and you helped her discover it. And
Could be.
then when you're discovering something about yourself, you can't hide yourself, can you? Because the real you comes out because you hadn't planned, you couldn't rehearse. So then you got the real her. That I love that. I love
Um,
that. That's what you did. And you did it instinctually. You didn't
it
plan
was
it.
an instinct. It was an instinctual thing. And I'll tell you, it's the thing that people. I remember this piece very well. So it got a lot of compliments, but going back to the negative, people would say to me, "How dare you ask her that? It's none of your business." And I was like, "Okay, but it got me the cover." So
But it's not what's the reasoning behind that? It wasn't like a weird personal question. It's a
no, this guy that I knew had his friend on speakerphone because he thought he was going to get a raise. So he said, what did you think of Charles's piece? And it was a lady, and she said, "Oh, I thought he was very rude. I don't like people asking personal questions like that. He should have just asked her about the book." And so
yeah, there's a guy out there. I mean, he's gone away, but he might have gone away because I've blocked him everywhere. Um, he feels that I shouldn't have these calls on video. Like I think at the time he started reaching out to me, it was 150 calls because he thinks that I should lose weight and he can help me. And he doesn't think that it's appropriate or sending a good message to people. I wouldn't say this when it first happened because I don't want to give anyone any, but I doubt he's still watching the videos because he's so offended by them because I'm sending a bad message to people evidently. But the guy reached out to me on Twitter and then I blocked him and then Instagram and then I blocked him and then Facebook Messenger and then I blocked him. And then he started sending me emails through my website because he is personally offended that
no,
someone living their best life. Do you know what I mean?
I
It's
don't believe that he's offended. I believe there's something underneath that.
he's
You
got
know,
issues,
well,
but
and there's something about you
it's not.
um, that's I don't know. It could be an attraction. It could be. There's something about
Ooh,
you.
that now that's gross. I was
Who's gonna
happier
put
with the
that?
yes.
Who's gonna put that much work into it? I mean, you don't.
Right.
I mean, you don't
But
look to me like you're overweight at all.
but
So
the
I
thing
mean,
the
even
thing
if
is
you are,
like
who cares? But it's not.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I've been totally vocal. I don't care. I lived in LA for years, like skinny, fat, whatever. I mean, the guy's not. I lost all shame, I think about 120 calls ago. So like he's beating a dead horse. But but I what I've learned just having just these little videos in this little corner of the universe, and I disable comments for that reason. And I already get unsolicited advice. Like a lot of people telling me how to do things. And I am of no I have like just the audience I have, narrators, a very specific audience, and I know most of them. Like you put, and I said this yesterday, I don't know if it's like 500, 5,000, but I posted with just your name on it, like 5,000 or something, like a crazy amount of people saw that promo. So if in my little world, I'm exposed to that many strangers' opinions, I can't even imagine what somebody especially a topic like Marilyn Monroe, where people think they own it. I
Yes,
can't imagine how many opinions you are exposed to.
a
You have
lot.
to have a thick skin by now.
I don't. That's why I say like that's why I don't even read reviews. It's like I said, I have to be drunk to read them. I don't have a thick skin. I I and you know what? Here's the thing. Another thing. I feel that I don't mind, like you said about like real criticism.
Yeah,
Occasionally you get something that you're like, it's like a light bulb goes off and like, oh yeah, and you don't get offended by that. But I do feel that there's some people that write, it's like a veiled personal attack.
yeah.
Um, and it's not about the work. And that is very frustrating, because you can't tell people this isn't about the work. This review right here, it's not about the work. Um, so it's I can't develop a thick skin about it. I just can't. It
But I
hurts.
have a theory. See what you did with Maria Shriver. Um, that comes from a place of connecting to what's honest in you, what you honestly wanted to hear, right? That's pure honesty. You have to be open to be able to have the guts to talk to somebody face to face directly like that, not play the
Right.
game, not like do the. So I think that honesty scares the hell out of some people. And I think that's what that is. They react with fear. If you're I hate the word authentic because that is the most annoying amount of memes out there. Authentic, whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't think people like honesty. I don't think people like people that own themselves and that ask the hard questions.
You know, like I said, there's things underneath. So that's what they're saying
Yeah,
on the surface, and then there's something underneath, and you don't know what it is, but you could just tell it's not. This isn't about the work. You know,
yeah.
maybe it's somebody that you offended once, or you know, whatever it is. Who knows?
You sound like someone they hated. You write like someone they. So,
Yeah.
so you're doing this. So did you do the book with him and meet with him a lot of times and become
Yes.
friends?
He became one of my great friends, one of my true friends. He's still alive. He's in his 90s. I told the publisher, well, I really want to do a book, but I can't do it unless he does it with me and agrees to do it with me, because a lot of his life was lived in the shadowy underworld on street corners and gay bars and things like that. So there's no way you couldn't research it. There was no trail.
And what you said about making something shade, because I did burlesque in London and Soho. And it's like my favorite part of London was like the seedy part of Soho. It's turning something, and obsessed with the vaudeville, like you with the Hollywood. I loved the vaudeville, the showgirls, the burly stars, because it was a rough life and there were a lot of uncomfortable, but they made it beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved what you said about him, that he took the shadiness and he wrote about it and he made it beautiful. I love that.
It had a profound effect on me. Even before I was thinking about writing, it was the right thing. It was the right book at the right time. And I do
Yeah.
remember getting that book, City of Night. I was in a bookstore browsing, and it just practically jumped off the shelf into my arms. I don't, it was just a thing. You know how sometimes you get that I'm going to come across as a kook, but sometimes you get that psychic thing. It
Oh,
was just
believe
like,
me, we've got way past that woo woo on these calls. Yeah, I've got Lori here. Lori and I alone have like beat you like 100-fold on the whole out there conversation. So no worries. But
well, it
it's
was like
true.
a psychic moment. Like it was like I knew I had to read it. And it was the right book at the right time. It opened up a whole new world for me about writing and everything. And then when, like I said, I started writing for a living, I read it again, and I wanted to learn his secrets. Like how did he move me? How did he affect me? So he became a great teacher for me too. But also, yeah, I started meeting with him. I'd go over his place in the late afternoon. I'd bring like some wine. We'd sit, we'd talk. I had the tape recorder running. And I was just, it was one time that writing changed my life because he changed my life, and it was just, a great thing. So that was my first, contracted book.
What about responsibility? Did you feel the weight of responsibility that you're holding someone's life in your hands, in your words, in your interpretation? Did that feel like more
Yeah.
than a novel? Do you know what I mean? This is a live
Oh,
person.
yes. And he's sensitive too, and he's a little narcissistic in a good way. And so I had to, I didn't want to write a Valentine to him.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to put some of the bad stuff in. So I didn't show him anything while I was writing it. I didn't show him a thing. And then before I handed it in, I gave it to him, and uh, the only thing that he made me change was sometimes when I was writing, putting reviews of his books. Okay, now here's where we're all going to relate. He he said that don't quote so much the bad reviews. I had to deal with them when they came out. So I trimmed them, but I wanted to
Yeah.
show like people were showing the people that loved it and the people that were attacking. So I was like, okay, point taken. I could do that, and that's the only thing that he asked me to change. And he added things. He didn't ask me to delete anything, but he added something.
Okay, so from there, what was the next one?
The Fame Game,
And
which is a novel.
what was that about?
It's a novel. I call it like kind of like a modern day Valley of the Dolls. I wanted to write like a pot boiler, and it's about three climbers, uh, and they're based on people I know. Like there's a male hustler who's a little bit based on John Rechy, but it's contemporary. I mean, it takes place today, and they're all trying to make it like they're trying to make it in the modeling and acting world, and they're backstabbing each other and betraying each other and falling in love with
Those are
each
the
other.
best books. I love those.
It's a little bit on the trash.
All with like Rockford File Columbo outfits.
That one went out of print. So I'm bringing it out It went out of print. I got the rights from the company before they went out of business, and I'm doing a newer version of it. I'm going to come out with, like, on Amazon, the self-publishing thing. I'm coming out with a new version of it. I'm doing an audio book. That's why my voice is a little raspy right now. I'm doing an audio book of
Oh,
it.
that's brilliant. Are you going to a
Well,
studio and doing it?
no,
Are
my
you?
friend, my very good friend Kelvin, God bless him, for my birthday last year, gave me like a little mini studio. Well, it's a very good one. I'm saying little. It's like real professional. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to use it. I'd sat there for a year because I was afraid to touch it. But another friend of mine came over and taught me, Joe, and he came over and he taught me how to use it. And slowly but surely, I started doing it and listening to myself, and then, you know, erasing it and going back. Here's something. I started with the Marilyn Diaries, and I was like, I don't know, 20 minutes into it, and I said, this needs a woman's voice. Can't do it. It was
Yeah.
wrong. But the Fame Game is written in alternating chapters, and it's the third person, and the first person is the male character that's narrating the story. So it works. It works much better. And he's a New
Yeah.
Yorker, and I have the New York accent and everything. It kind of works. Feels right.
And believe me, because I mean, the thing is some it's different because you're an actor. I mean, that's different. Some writers doing their own books, it can go horribly wrong, but some of them need to be done by the writer. And if the writer can in any way, and a lot of times it means get the help, go to a studio and have somebody help them with it and everything. But because a lot of them are their stories, and it is nicer to, if they can get it, but it, some of them probably should have gone. But you're an actor, and that's
No, it
different
could be
altogether.
no. But it's a whole different. And now I'm gonna have a question for you.
Mhm.
It's a whole different medium, and what I find difficult, and I go back and I replay it too much, too little. When you're doing, say, a conversation between two women, how much, like, if you were doing a man, how much do you change your voice, or do you just like give a lower register, or how much do you
Okay,
change it?
so everyone's going to have a different opinion about this. There are many, many opinions out there because everyone's got their own way of approaching it. But because I come from an acting background, and I'm not, I I have a hard time not being distracted. So I have to do my biggest challenge is to make sure I'm completely like in character when I'm narrating. So I find a way to anchor my characters in my head before I go in and narrate. And
Mhm.
then I personally do a conversation recorded, so I have a voice clip of each character introducing themselves to
Oh,
each other
oh
in their
wow,
voice and
that's
explaining
cool.
their situation in the book. That way I've got their voice, I've got their main problem, I know exactly where it is on a timestamp, and I can kind of check back if I have to go back. But when it's women, and I notice a lot of men, sometimes they'll just make the woman's voice higher, but sometimes they make them sound stupid. And
Mm.
then you're left wondering, does he think women are stupid? Because like all women don't sound like this. So yes, the general rule is when you're doing women, they go up at the end. When you're doing men, it's declaratory. It goes, but what are they thinking? Do you know what I mean? Is
Mhm.
is so it's and you'll know this being an actor, is if you've got two women, is one of them tightly controlled? Does she remind you of a certain person in a movie or a sitcom that you can think of
Mhm.
while you're narrating? Is another one, a flittery gibbet or whatever that word is, or are they very serious about everything? How are they breathing? How are they standing? Are they tight? Are they loose? Are they happy generally? Do they have heavy energy?
Mhm.
So if you ask yourself those questions about the women, then when they're talking to each other, you don't have to be thinking, how do I
Yeah,
make her voice sound? Because they're having a conversation, you
yeah,
know.
that's cool. I'm gonna try that because I found that way. I can't. I just I just give it a small flavoring of, I just try to change it a little bit so you can distinguish the two voices.
Yeah, because you don't want to put on a voice because it sounds
No,
so
it's
fake and so,
no.
but what you do want to do is feel like you're kind of like in the character,
Mhm.
and then the voice follows and takes care of herself, because a tight type A corporate girl that really needs to be in control of everything and has to, is not going to be the same as your Southern belle that's sitting here wanting to seduce you, is she? Do you know what I mean? It's subtle changes, but it's different. I mean, different people. They're different people,
Yeah, yeah,
and so I don't like to focus so much on the voice. I like to focus on what the person's thinking. And
that's
then
great. Great
because you're
advice.
in their ear when they're like listening to audiobooks at night, you're literally in their ear. You don't want to hear like Eeyore and like the Flintstones characters, in a
Yeah.
book. You want to hear
Yes.
real people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
of the Muppets. I said, this sounds like the Muppets. I have to redo this because that's what made me say no voices.
yeah, and I mean they'll have voices, but it'll stem from what they're thinking and who they are.
Hmm.
But
That's
you
great
won't.
advice.
I find that you won't decide on the voice. The voice will come out of the character.
Hmm. That's great advice. I'm going to try that definitely. Wow. Now I'm going to have to start all over again.
Okay, so the other one, the oh my God, famous movie stars.
Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth and Monty.
Yes, Elizabeth and Monty, that was it. I'm interested in that one. How did that happen?
I just was Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift are two of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I wanted to explore them, but I didn't want to explore. There's so many really good books about Elizabeth Taylor, and there's two really great books about Montgomery Clift, and I didn't feel like I had enough to add to a full book to interest me,
Hmm.
to interest me, and I was fascinated with that relationship because it changed the direction of both of their lives and careers. And it's one of those, I think we all have I have an Elizabeth and you have a Monty and I have a Monty and you have a, and so I was very interested in that relationship, how they changed each other, and what direction it made them go in, and what would have happened if they didn't meet each other, how different their lives would be and everything. So I was really, again, it's like I had to do it in a way that interested me. Otherwise, it won't be. I don't think it would be interesting to a reader.
Yeah. Yeah. So you did that. So that type of book, was it really research heavy?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. And the first part of doing a book like that, and it was the same thing with the Marilyn Monroe biography, is I say you've got to be a detective. You got that before you even start the writing, you've got to try to find out people who are still alive, who worked with them, or knew them, or then I go to like their parents knew them, because if you knew Elizabeth Taylor, you have a tendency to pass the story down. So if that person has passed on, their children might know some of the things.
Mm.
So it's like a lot of legwork and phone calls and tracking down people, and that's the whole first part. But it's good because as you're doing that, you're learning things about them that you didn't know before, and so it's opening up the character.
So Marilyn. So did the Marilyn biography, did that come after Elizabeth and Monty or before?
It can't before it came out 218, the
Okay,
hard.
so I got that wrong in the promo. So
All right,
um,
hardback, paperback, hardback. They kind of like leapfrog over each other.
so what was that? Because you had said earlier that you wrote the novel because, there's so many biographies. So what made you pivot and make the decision to do a biography? And yours, I love the cover of yours because it's not the glitzy, it's like a human being.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting photo because it's from a photo shoot where she is very glitzy and glamorous, and
Oh,
that was an unguarded moment, So that's what I wanted, an unguarded moment when she was just, because the name of it's private and public, Marilyn Monroe, the private life of a public icon. So that picture is pretty much both. You know, it's the public and the private person.
How long
So,
did it take you to write that one?
well, that was a contract, and it was 2 years. I had 2 years to write it. Um, it's funny because they kept saying to me, "We want new things. We want new things on Marilyn. We don't want the old stuff." So,
Sure, piece of cake. The most recorded woman in the world.
exactly, exactly. But I knew that if I knew that I could do it, you know, because
Yeah,
I'm enough in that world. I knew where to go.
yeah.
Um, but then when I was writing it, you have 100,000 words, say. You have to tell her whole story too, because people are going to be reading it and they don't know. I remember I was in the dentist office, and my the assistant said, "Oh, I love Marilyn Monroe. I can't wait for your book to come out." And she started talking about it, and I said something like, "Oh yeah, and growing up in the foster care system." And she said, "I didn't know Marilyn Monroe was in the foster care system." And I said, "Oh, it was an awakening, because I'm like, you have to make sure people are going to read this and not know these things." So
See,
then I'm
that
bound.
surprises me that anyone doesn't know that.
I know, and someone who's into her, a fan. So I said, you gotta make sure you cover all those beats, and then try to put the new stuff in. And I found that I left out a lot of the new stuff that I found out, because I had to tell the story. When I handed it in, it was almost 200,000 words. They gave it back to me. They said, cut it down. I had to cut it down. It was like 180,000 words. I had to cut out like 80,000 words.
Ooh, so you could write a sequel with the new stuff
Maybe, maybe. Yeah,
from
it's all.
our mouths to the publisher's ears.
Yeah.
Can you submit a proposal and say you didn't give me enough space? How about a sequel?
I talked to my agent about it, and he said it's too soon for another Marilyn book, which I get. So that may be something down the line.
Keep your notes.
Oh, I got the board and notes, and yeah, I got it all.
So,
And I got the draft, so most of it's written. It's just a matter of, like, cut and paste.
so do you feel what's the difference between how you feel about Marilyn now and how you felt about Marilyn before writing that book?
Um, I knew a lot. I knew an awful lot about Marilyn, because I started, like I said, when I was a little boy. Um, but one of the things that I don't I think it was because I was living with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how dark she was. And she was a very sensitive person, and she had a death wish, for example, and she was a very depressed lady. And it was hard. I remember I was talking to a psychiatrist to get background information on Marilyn, and he said, we talked for like an hour, and then at the end of it, he said, "Are you dreaming about her?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Because this is really dark stuff to live with." And I said,
Wait,
"Yeah,
did
it's
she
like,
really have a death wish? She really did have a death wish.
oh yes, very much so, very much so." Just, like, she'd be sitting in acting class, and she'd be sitting next to one of the students that she became close with, and she'd write on the notebook, "Let's kill ourselves," and pass it over. That kind of.
Wow.
So yeah, and then, she was manic depressive. So then she had periods where she was very upbeat and enthusiastic. And then the dark periods came. In those days, manic depression, bipolar wasn't even a word, wasn't really treated properly. I think they medicated her, and they sedated her, because they didn't really know, how to deal with her manic depression. Um, and she self-medicated, as everyone does, especially back then. Um, but yeah, she's a dark person. But that's where I come into trouble, because a lot of people don't want to hear it. They want the Cinderella version.
You see, I think that when I heard that, that makes me, because I didn't realize the extent of it, but that just makes me look at the weirdness that people feel that affinity, because we're all attracted to our dark side, even though we won't acknowledge it. So maybe that's a tiny bit of what people see and
I
feel.
think it is. I think that in order to be as light and bright as she is, there has to be a dark side.
Yeah. And
There
we
has to
probably
be,
see that.
yeah.
And
That's
the fight between the the seeking and the moments of it's a manic depressive, the fight between the moments of joy and then the knowledge that the depth is there. Of
yeah.
course we're obsessed with that. because we all have, I'm sorry, which one of us has not had dark nights of the soul or been up at 4 a.m, you
Yeah,
know?
nobody worth knowing. Everybody, everyone with a sensitivity or, in them, you question things, you
Yeah.
just question, especially in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Yeah, that
So
goes a
it's
long
something
way
that
to explain.
the depth of Marilyn, of her unhappiness, and she said, I mean, she said it in one of her interviews. The reporter asked her, how she was, where was she in her life, and this was in 1960, and she said, "Well, if I'm generally anything, I'm generally miserable."
So people not wanting to hear that, probably because they don't want to face it in themselves.
Partially, and partially because she gives them so much joy, they want her to have it too.
I think that's a very kind outlook on other people. I might be more cynical. But but okay, so what about you? Did you make decisions about who you want to be as an emotional being from spending that long in that dark place doing that book? Did it change your perspective on your own feelings about your life and yourself?
I think that had I written it earlier, it would have, but I'm very mature, and it didn't. I was able to, when the book was done, I was able to go back to my loving Marilyn the way that I do, and not living that darkness all the time. But if had I written it 10 years earlier, I think it would have had a profound change in me because
But
I
the
pretty much love
darkness,
myself.
the first book that you did, I'm interrupting you, I'm sorry, but there's a thought I'm trying to connect. The first book that you did, Reach, I'm going to get the name wrong.
John Rechy.
The Hustler, right?
Mhm.
And you said that he had a shady existence, but he managed to write that in a beautiful way. And if you look at it, Marilyn did the same thing, right? She had the dark, and she managed to present it as light. She created art out of her dark. So it's not any less so, is it? I mean, they're not very different from each other, are they?
No, they're really not. I mean, not at the core of them. I think that they're similar. Montgomery Clift as well. Not Elizabeth Taylor,
Really?
but yeah. So
Not a, not Elizabeth Taylor? Why not? Why?
Elizabeth Taylor, she loved life. She had a big appetite for life. She wanted the biggest
Wow.
jewels. She wanted the most men. She wanted to be the best actress. I mean, she was a big lusty lady, and she was very true to her friends, and she was just a great person. But I don't think she self-reflected very often. I don't think at 3 in the morning she doubted herself or judged herself as so many of us do. She just took a big bite out of life every day.
I
So
want to
she
be like Elizabeth Taylor then.
Me too. Me
So what
too.
about Montgomery Cliff?
Well, he's another one. He was gay in a time when it was not allowed. So he was forced to live this kind of double life. He was a Hollywood leading man. And they would try to set him up on the dates with the female, co-stars and stuff, and just didn't want anything to do with it because he wasn't a liar. He didn't want to pretend. So he became sort of a rebel in Hollywood. And but he had a dark side. I'm not saying that it stemmed from being homosexual in the days when that was considered a perversion, but I think it helped. I mean, I think it played into it
Having to
a lot.
hide half of who you are.
Yeah.
But do you think they do that still? Make people go out with people because of publicity?
I think until the very recent past, they did, but I don't think now they do. Right now, no, it's like the more genders you have, I think the better off you are.
And after
Uh,
Me Too, they probably wouldn't dare.
right,
Yeah.
right. I don't think there's any judgment. As far as I know, I don't think there's any judgment on their sexuality right now. Okay, wait a minute. In middle America, of course. It's, I'm talking about in Hollywood and
But I don't mean sexuality. I mean money. I'm wondering if they set people up because so and so being together with so and so will make the studio more money.
oh, I probably. Oh yeah. I think a lot of relationships are cooked up in a PR office. I do
Yeah,
think that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Because actors know, they want their movies to be hits too, and they know what to say or what to do that will get them talked about. Like, okay, I remember shortly before Joan Rivers passed away, she had a book coming out, and she was on a like something on CNN, I think, and the lady who was interviewing her asked like kind of like an innocuous question. It wasn't, and Joan like got furious and got up and walked out. Well, I don't think she was really offended by the question, but the next day, what was trending everywhere
She's in the
was
paper.
Joan Rivers walks out on CNN, and then she walks out on the interview. So everyone was looking for it, and everyone was talking about the book. So I think
So,
they know how to trend.
okay, so I'm thinking I need to go. I want to read the Elizabeth Monty one, and I want to read the Marilyn biography, and then I'm going to stalk you and try to get you to come back again. So I can
I would
ask
love it.
her.
I enjoyed this. This was fun.
I think this is just fascinating, and it was, and not only that, because we talked about the good important stuff, but there's like this just delicious edge of gossip included, which is lovely, which always makes everything okay. But
Okay,
all
it's
joking
juicy.
aside,
It's juicy, not gossipy. I hate when they call a book gossipy. It's juicy because you can't write about Elizabeth Taylor without talking about her affairs and her drug taking and her, all that. So yeah, it's juicy.
see, I don't know anything. All I know is like her as a character. I'm one of those people that like when I was a kid, I didn't understand that there were actors. I thought I really did think that Lucille Ball was like an aunt. I really did believe that like I got so annoyed when they had those award shows because they were preempting my normal television scheduling. Like I had it, they were like my world. So the whole red carpet and who's who and what they're doing in their real life, I don't know because I only know
Okay.
the characters. So do you know what I mean? It's kind of jarring when you
You
believed it.
are a biographer's delight because you're not going in the book with any preconceived notions.
Yeah, none.
So that's that. Like, I want to hear what you think about it. I
Yeah,
want
I
to hear.
so I want to check out the Elizabeth one next. So,
Wait,
okay. I've got a question for you. Nobody gets away without asking. Um, famous last words for the studio audience, for the YouTube audience, might be watching this in 60, 70, 80, 100 years. If you
wait.
could leave them with one thing from this call, if they could only remember one thing, what would you like them? A word of advice, something, a thought, what would you leave them with?
I would say um, take your detractors with a grain of salt. Um, don't don't let it change you or color what you're doing. Um, be true to your voice, be true to your inner self, and try to let it roll off of you if you can.
Love it. Perfect. This, and I do, I mean, to be candid, I say this a lot, but I really genuinely mean it. This was the call we needed tonight. This was
Um,
amazing. I'm
wow.
honored that you joined us,
I'm honored to be
and it was fabulous. I'm so going to be like your biggest fan. And don't
here.
worry, I won't leave any weird reviews or anything.
I'll be yours too. We'll stalk each other.
Yes, I shall be stalking Charles Casillo after I read the biographies. And you guys, I'll put a link to that movie on the about section with your permission because it was really good.
Oh
And
wow.
the trailer, I only saw the trailer. I'm going to see if I can get it somewhere. And to all your books, highly,
Okay.
highly recommended. You have, now I see why people love you so much.
Oh wow. What a nice thing to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
From the
Thank you
bottom
for
of my heart.
joining us.
It was a
And
pleasure.
thank you to the studio audience. You guys are amazing. Mwah! See you guys later. Bye, Charles.